What's going on, everybody? It is that time again, the Sooners Illustrated podcast, episode 200 on Friday, August 15th, 2025. Josh Callaway, Collin Kennedy with you. 15 days until kickoff. 15. That's it. 2 weeks from tomorrow, Saturday, Oklahoma will be playing football. Pretty wild. Feels good.
A lot to cheers to today. My goodness, 200, 15 days away. A lot more to discuss.
Wow. It's getting real out here. We are getting close. We're kind of getting to that point in camp, a little bit of the dog days of camp. Some of the excitement of it has kind of worn off a little, and we're kind of getting to that point where it's like, let's get some games rolling. And we're very close to it. On the program today, Collin's with us. Going to be some recruiting catch-up stuff. Obviously, 2 big decisions this week for Oklahoma targets. One good, one not good. We'll discuss both and kind of what's next in 2026, as obviously the high school season is rapidly approaching, and obviously the college season rapidly approaching. We'll get into all of it a little bit on this Recruiting Friday with Collin Kennedy. Programming note, so today we're doing the show on Friday here. We're recording a little early. We're going to try and turn the show and get it out early because Brent Venables is going to talk to the media today after practice this afternoon, Friday afternoon, along with some more players. It'll, of course, as always, be live on the YouTube channel to watch if you want to catch up with Coach Venables and the team. So that's why we're going to get the show out a little earlier today. It'll probably be a little shorter of a show as well, as we kind of try and hit some stuff and get on into the weekend here. The last weekend without college football until, I guess, like January, until the season's over, so feels good. Very, very nice. And so, yeah, it'll be a good weekend here, and get ready to get this thing rolling here very, very soon. A reminder, as always, again, subscribe at Oklahoma247sports.com. Use the promo code SoonersPod60 for 60% off a VIP membership right now. We're in the middle of fall camp, scrimmage intel, camp intel, recruiting intel. It's all there. Lots of VIP content on the website. The season obviously coming up very, very soon, so be sure to subscribe and use that promo code SoonersPod60, all one word, if you're listening on Pod, on Apple, Spotify, wherever. Use that promo code, get a year subscription for 60% off. Like I said, calling off the top, this is episode 200. Not to be, we're not going to be mushy or anything here, but 200, that's a lot of episodes. Pretty cool that we made it this long. I think I've seen before, like the average podcast lasts like 7 episodes or something. So the fact, we made it to 200 is pretty cool. So shout out everyone who has tuned in, whether this is, you've been in for all 200 or this is your first. Appreciate everyone. You don't make it 200 episodes if people aren't watching and listening and, keeping up with the content. So shout out everyone who's tuned in. But yeah, kind of cool, CK. I mean, it's just a number. Doesn't really mean anything, but 200. I mean, that's a lot of episodes. That doesn't even include all the instant reaction shows and everything else we've done. But 200 episodes, pretty sick. It's kind of crazy. It's kind of flown by a little bit, honestly, a little bit.
It feels like just yesterday we were called on to start this site and this YouTube channel. And now a couple of years later, here we are at episode 200. And I said it when we talked about the Sooners Pod 60 promo code that you can use. And I'll say it again here at episode 200. All of this stuff is because folks at our company recognize there is value in this show. And that is because of you, the consumer out there. Those that have supported us, hop in the comments section, engage in conversation, share nice words. And then obviously, even if you don't necessarily interact with the show, those of you who are just watching and listening, it does us a huge service. It helps this site a ton. It helps Josh and I keep a job, buy our wives Christmas presents, as I always say, which is very important. So a huge credit to all of you. We deeply appreciate you guys and the support, and we cannot wait for the 2025 season. I think it's only going to get better as we move forward.
No doubt. It's been an awesome run to this point, and we're fired up. This is everything set up to be our biggest and best season yet. Season 3 of Sooners Illustrated. The YouTube channel recently hit 5,000 subs, a nice little milestone. And look, I mean, we joked about it before. We're the new kids on the block. There are lots of places that you can get OU content. There are lots and lots of OU podcasts and shows. And so everyone who chooses to tune in and hang out with us a couple times a week, we really, really appreciate it. So pretty cool. 200 episodes. And again, we've done instant reaction shows and game previews. Like it's really, I don't know what the actual number is, but as far as the regular weekly show, up to 200. Pretty cool. And we continue to move forward, and we're getting ready to kick off another season here very, very soon. Exciting over at Sooners Illustrated for the 2025 season. So with all that get that out of the way, let's get into it. We're going to do some recruiting stuff here today on a Friday. As always, have our guy here, Collin Kennedy, who knows Oklahoma recruiting as good as anyone. Like I said, 2 big decisions came down this week. We're going to talk about them both. One went good, one did not go so good, and then we'll kind of get into what's next for Oklahoma in 2026. Let's start with the good. Jake Kreul committed Oklahoma on Tuesday afternoon. He actually did so on the Pat McAfee show, which was different. I mean, you would know better than me, but it's like we've watched guys commit on Instagram, on Twitter, we in person, obviously, on our own YouTube, 24/7 Sports, other entities. Pat McAfee show was a first for me on Tuesday, but he jumps in and, look, we talked about Jake a lot on this show and for good reason. After Bo Bentley, this was the guy in this class, high-end edge rusher, 4-star guy, obviously at IMG Academy there in Florida. This was a huge get. Collin, obviously, everyone knew it was. Just his commitment alone launched Oklahoma up like 10, 11, 12 spots in the team class rankings. This was one that felt like they had to have, and they got it done. Shout out Miguel Chavis, who continues to crush it on the recruiting trail. Huge win for Oklahoma here, right, to get Jake Kreul into the boat this week. And it came at a good time. Oklahoma fans needed some good news on Tuesday. And they got it right here with Jake Kreul jumping in. A big, big win for Oklahoma.
Did you see last night he had 3 sacks over 3 straight plays?
Yeah. He's a monster.
Gotta love that if you are Oklahoma or an Oklahoma fan. And I give a ton of credit to not only Miguel Chavis, but the entire Oklahoma coaching staff and the front office, because I do personally believe that Jim Nagy and the front office crew played a huge role in getting this done. And let's rewind. Let's tell the story of this process, right? I want to go back to earlier this year in the spring when the contact period opened and coaches were allowed to go out, travel, see guys in person. The contact period is basically, it's like no holds barred, go wherever you want, do whatever you want. Like, just go talk to these guys as long as you stay within the confines of reasonable activity, right?
Yeah.
Why I say that, Miguel Chavis took it upon himself to go out to see Jake Kreul during the contact period 2 times individually and had dinner with Kreul and his family, went a 3rd time, to my knowledge, with Todd Bates, Brent Venables. I mean, you get the head ball coach, someone like Todd Bates, to go with Chavis back out there to go see Jake Kreul. They had been invested in him from the start. One of the first bigger schools, as Jake would say, to invest in his recruitment. And I think he always had that in the back of his mind. But then to kind of see more actions follow the words along the way, right, with all those in-person visits and then the OV in June. But I want to go from the spring and you go into the summer. And the belief was that Oklahoma was firmly the leader, right? But then there's some Florida buzz that comes up. And Kreul is a Florida legacy. The Gators were his dream school growing up as a kid. And UF really wanted to figure out a way to get this one done. And I think Oklahoma and everyone else in the recruitment at the time had every reason to be nervous. But OU knew that it was going to get the last OV for the June 20th weekend. Kreul goes through his time in Gainesville and leaves uncommitted, right? There was still a lot of buzz around UF, but then he takes a few more OVs. Texas trip is in there. Ole Miss visit is in there. We'll talk about some of that stuff in a second, but
yeah,
you get to the Champion Barbecue and it does what it does, right? And I think out of that official visit, it became abundantly clear, even with Florida's surge, Oklahoma had kind of fended Florida off to a degree. So that was the first test, right, over the last few months. You get out of that, and Kreul drops his top 3. We've talked about it at length. It was Ole Miss, Texas, and Oklahoma.
Mm-hmm.
Ole Miss is interesting. We know the investment that they put into the defensive line, but specifically through the portal. We talked about it here on the show. There was some buzz. Hey, maybe Ole Miss is starting to investing that money into defensive linemen in the recruiting scene.
Yeah.
It's typically, let's just be honest, it's cheaper. So Ole Miss became a serious threat, but Texas. The next battle that Oklahoma faced was the Red River rival, the Longhorns, really starting to pick up pursuit of Kreul. And I'm going to be honest with you, Texas, for a little bit, wasn't necessarily all that in the picture. And I think that was a Texas choice. They were kind of keeping things warm, but I think once the board broke a certain way, Kreul became a very realistic target for Texas. So they pursued him as one of the few remaining uncommitted targets at edge. And as Texas normally does, they pick up a ton of steam in a short amount of time. Now, here's why I'm glad we're celebrating 200 episodes. I love the engagement. What was that? Last week, we were talking about Kreul. We were acknowledging, hey, Texas might have quite literally taken a lead, but I was sitting here on the show saying,
yeah,
I don't know that this one is done yet. I believe my exact verbiage was, we're still kind of in the midst of some back and forth, some shifting and negotiations. Obviously, the comment section, love them to death, adamant it's done deal to Texas, right? And to be quite honest with you, it was pretty much close to being done. But I'm not the smartest man in the world. I do this for a living. So sometimes I actually come up with something decent. And it's like, I'm just going to be honest with y'all. The buzz that I had been receiving this time last week when we were talking about Kreul was, hey, like, yeah, Texas is making a push, but like Oklahoma's not sitting on its hands.
Right.
The phone's going to get picked up. And you have to acknowledge that. And we're going to acknowledge another dynamic similar here in a second. And I think that's kind of what makes this recruiting battle interesting. Florida became a very realistic option for Kreul. Oklahoma fended them off. Texas really comes out of nowhere and potentially gets in a position to pick up a commitment. But Oklahoma, man, even in a matter of days, figures it out, gets the deal done, and OU gets its highest defensive priority in the 2026 cycle. It's a massive win at face value, but when you really think about the process that led us here, especially relative to this type of talent and the stakes, it's a ton of credit to Oklahoma for getting this thing done.
Massive win, a guy we talked about, a lot, and for good reason. And Miguel Chavis continues to crush it. Obviously, his group with Nelson and Norman and now Kreul feels like he's got another really, really good crop in 2026 to kind of build on. Obviously, his position is one that's a strength right now and looks like it will continue to be into the future. Obviously, we talked about him a lot, but for people who maybe don't know, and I'll say again, the guy's a high 4-star. He goes to IMG. Like, I think most people can understand the fact that he's good, but like, how good? I mean, as a guy who watches high school football for a living and you evaluate these guys and everything, how good is this guy? Like this, it feels like he has star potential, right? I mean, that seems fair. Like, this is a guy that you can build your defense around potentially down the road, it would seem. Especially
in a Brent Venables defense.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, there's a reason why this was Brent's favorite player in the class. And I think kind of the overarching theme, and you can see it at 247sports.com, our director of scouting, Andrew Ivins, the first thing he says in the scouting report, polished pass rusher, can win early or late with technique and hustle, may not blow you away off the hook with the build, but the game tape paints a different picture. This is just someone who, once the lights turn on and it's time to show like who's got it and who doesn't.
Yeah.
But Jake Kreul's got it. Right. And I think what really stands out to me about him, I mean, take like the back-to-back-to-back sacks he had last night at one point out of the equation. Even if you just watch him on a down-and-down basis, right? This to me is a player who, exactly like Ivins mentions in the scouting report, like the floor is just so high for this guy.
Yeah.
Because he's already a very advanced player. Very few young pass rushers at his age have a level of understanding and awareness of the pass rush side of the game like he does. And I think I talked about it on the show. I don't know of a lot of guys his age who are helping train his peers. Like, guys his age are seeking him out for training and advice. And like, that's incredibly rare.
Right.
And it shows on the field. He can overwhelm offensive linemen with, again, his understanding, kind of the bag that he has to his advantage. And then you just love it because let's say his initial pass rush plan or even his counter or adjustment doesn't work. Well, this guy gives it his all every snap. And he can sometimes win just because he wants it more. And I think, honestly, even you see some of the clips, you see some of the interactions, him asking Pat McAfee on Pat McAfee's show to come watch him play IMG, and then he wants to have a meeting with Pat to talk about branding and NIL. Like, this guy wants it, and he wins that way on the field. It's a perfect fit for Oklahoma. It's a perfect fit for guys like Brent Venables and Miguel Chavis. And I think that's going to inevitably play itself out on the field in Norman.
Yeah, and I would think too that this would warm Oklahoma fans the fact that they are getting a guy like this. You know, we talked a lot, like maybe need to get into the season and show that, you know, go beat a Michigan or, you know, at least get some wins. That he jumping in before the season is kind of you know, a lot of faith there on Jake's side in Brent Venables and kind of just the overall direction of this thing. I think that should excite you from an OU fan too, that he's buying into the, you know, the prospects of this thing and still having that belief in that the fact that Brent Venables and his staff can still get players like this on the defensive side of the football in particular, despite it being a little wobbly right now, you know, it just kind of goes to show you what is possible if Oklahoma can put together a good season. It feels like they're close. Like you go win some games and this could really take off. And we'll get into that a little bit with what's still on the table in 2026. But to get a player like this is obviously quite a win for Oklahoma. One they needed to have, and they went and they got it done. Huge game with Jake Kreul. Hopefully, you know, we get an opportunity. Maybe, I mean, obviously IMG out in Florida, but get to see him a little more this season. Obviously, we pay closer attention to him now that he's in the boat, and a player that I think is going to be a lot of fun to see down the road when he actually, obviously, eventually makes it to Norman.
Yeah.
On the other side. So that was the big, great news on Tuesday. I joked that Oklahoma needed some good news. Also on Monday, you had the whole John Mateer Venmo snafu fiasco, whatever that seems to be put to bed. I don't think there's really much more there. But that came after Davian Groce did not commit to Oklahoma. He ended up with Florida on Monday. Now, this all happened so fast because Monday comes. And, you know, when we did the show last Friday, we talked about Groce then, but he didn't have a commitment date set. There was no, oh, I'm committing this day, this time, hoopla. It was just Monday morning. He said, hey, I'm making a decision today. And it was like, oh, okay, well, here we go. And we talked a lot about Oklahoma, a lot about Baylor. And that morning, you know, our Mike Roach at 24/7 Sports, who does a phenomenal job, basically was kind of like, still feel pretty good about Oklahoma here, but it just seemed like as it got later and later in the day, the Florida noise got louder and louder, and then lo and behold, Groce ends up committing to the Gators. Collin, obviously, fans freaked out about this. They're feeling better a little bit now, I'd imagine, with Kreul in, but nevertheless, Groce was a big target. We've talked about a lot. They only have one wide receiver committed in 2026. Groce was supposed to be the next guy. They don't get him. He ends up with the Gators. Take it whatever direction you'd like, but I guess for OU fans, they probably want to know just what happened here because it felt like it was OU was in good shape. Baylor was still right there. All of a sudden, here comes Florida. Boom, it's done. He's a Gator.
Yeah, let's start with kind of like a very brief, big picture conversation because I think it's important to acknowledge in this show specifically. Probably the hardest thing to figure out right now in coverage of recruiting and keeping up with recruiting is just how much has been figured out and really how much is still open. And why I say that, like, go back to last week, right? Everyone is saying, hey, Texas is the leader for Jake Kreul. Longhorns are probably going to get this one done. And all the while, Oklahoma is adamant, like, we're not giving up. Like, give us some time. We're going to make things interesting down the stretch. And you can never ignore that dynamic, right? With that as kind of the backdrop, in one hand, where it was like, I'm sitting in a tough spot on this show because I'm like, I don't know that I can dismiss Oklahoma at this time with a few days left to go. Man, you would have asked me to hop on the podcast that morning for Davian Groce. I'd have been like, look, I think this is Oklahoma.
Mm-hmm.
It's a wild world we live in today because that morning, and it just, again, it illuminates what this landscape is like sometimes. That morning, it's like, okay, Oklahoma's probably going to get this one done. You know, Mike and I checked in with some sources at Baylor. Baylor was like, you know, if it's not going to be us, it's probably Oklahoma. But then what caught a lot of people by surprise that day was just how much Florida wanted to get this thing done. And the important context here, right? There is a reason why Oklahoma and Baylor were always kind of seen at the top. Davian went on his official visit to Florida. It was a great trip. I mean, that Florida staff does an outstanding job. I've never met the likes of a Billy Napier to a Katie Turner, who runs their entire recruiting operation there. But I've been around Katie a little bit at some like events and things. Like, she knows what she's doing, and her entire staff. Florida nails the visits and the recruiting stuff. So, like, the Gators were always kind of there. Like, they were definitely third place almost the entire time.
Right.
But, like I mentioned, not only did Oklahoma and Baylor kind of gain the most momentum, they were there towards the top because distance was playing a big role. And I think Davian, for the longest time, you talk to anybody behind the scenes, there was an assumption that he wanted to kind of play closer to home. And to further that point, you know, Texas A&M was seen as a favorite early because not only is a lot of his dad's side of the family big A&M fans, it was a nearby option.
Sure.
And so Florida never really made a ton of sense until it suddenly did. And how do you get there? I'm just going to be honest. I think that Florida had some really productive conversations. Again, Davian likes that Florida staff a lot. I think he really likes Gainesville. I think he believes in them. I think Florida was also willing to invest, and they were willing to back up their words with a figure. And I mean, it's been all but confirmed. The negotiations were quite literally happening into the afternoon.
Yeah,
so,
right.
That's the elephant in the room. And by the way, important to say, good on Davian Groce and his family. Like, make the most of your moment, figure out your best opportunity, what you feel is best suited for you in the short term and long term. And I think that they did that from the morning when Davian said, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and shut it down today. After that, I think into the afternoon and night, they were making phone calls and really trying to buckle down the final destination. And it ends up being Florida. A huge tip of the cap to the Gators. That's a huge win for them. Obviously, a big recruiting loss for Oklahoma and Baylor. If you're OU, you know, yes, it's a disappointing outcome. Oklahoma really wanted this player, but at some point you have to operate within the confines of what you personally are comfortable with. You know, this is me just trying to put all the puzzle pieces together, right? And so Groce heads off to Florida. I think Oklahoma is very optimistic about some pivot points or what it can do. But I also think this is another thing too, right? And I had some questions about this on the board, so I got to talk about it a little bit. I think this is another thing too where Florida and Oklahoma, yes, are in similar positions. Baylor as well, right? Where there's a lot riding on this upcoming season. But Florida goes on like that. What was it? 4 games in a row, huge upset.
Won the last 4 games. Yeah.
DJ Lagway shows what he's capable of as a true freshman.
Right.
Billy Napier, like the emotions of that run that Florida went on. I mean, I still remember it today, the powerful moment that Billy Napier had where he was almost brought to tears in a post-game interview after their win. I want to say over LSU. Florida, like, yes, again, OU Florida, the win games narrative should still apply in theory, but I guess there's still some sense out there that like Florida has some upward trajectory because of how much is still being sorted out. And like Florida's going to be a really good football team this year if
Top
they stay healthy.
Preseason poll. Yeah.
Top 15 in the preseason poll. I think this is one for me where Davian Groce had a lot of family on his mother's side. They're big OU fans. Davian, he's admired Oklahoma for a long time. So is his mother. But I also think because of their fandom, right, they're very aware, like overly aware, as a fan would be, of, what the next few months could or could not look like in Norman. And I think that that's important to acknowledge. And I think that they felt maybe that with the negotiations that went on that day, the conversations and some of the trust that they built, the relationships they built at Florida. Joe Hamilton is on their staff there at Florida. He is a former like state of Texas guy. Yeah. I want to say he went to Louisville High School, so just down the street from me. Guy that I've heard about for the longest time. Never met personally, but everyone sings the praises of this dude. I think he had a big role to play here. And I think Florida just sold the vision of the program, the future of the program at a time where, again, Groce and his crew is very closely monitoring everything that is going on in Oklahoma. So it's a lot, right? And it was a lot that day. Yeah. But I think both parties are okay moving their separate ways. And I think the last thing I'm going to mention here, I've been asked repeatedly on the board, could OU flip Davian Groce? I don't see why not. Sure. Because of, again, the family connections, the distance. I think if Oklahoma goes out and plays well, and one of our subscribers did a great job of asking the question, if Oklahoma goes out and wins games, right? Let's say, I don't know, like DJ Lagway, knock on wood, deals with injuries or something like that, and Florida maybe disappoints a little bit. Kind of like I said with Jake Kreul in Oklahoma, like, they're definitely not going to not pick up the phone, and check the temperature. So I still think there would be a financial component you'd have to tackle, certainly. But you never know what those conversations are going to look like. So we'll see how this goes. But, yeah, it's a tough loss for Oklahoma, big win for Florida. I think everyone's okay with the way things played out, though.
Yeah, tough loss, like you said. I'm glad you brought up kind of the momentum of the programs because I saw a lot of that. Like Florida's in the same spot as Oklahoma is. And it's like, no, I mean, yes and no. Florida, like you said, I think people kind of forget the end of the year last year with a lot of momentum. Florida stood by Billy Napier, kind of had that reassurance of like, this is our guy. And they went out and they beat LSU. They beat Ole Miss. They won their bowl game. They took a lot of momentum with them into the offseason. DJ Lagway, like you said, is a very trendy name right now. Some people think one of the best quarterbacks in the country, on the short list, right? I mean, they've got a little more vibes than Oklahoma does, especially offensively, right? And I know Oklahoma, there's a lot of hope, obviously, for this thing this year with Ben Arbuckle, but it's far more unproven, unshown on the field than what Florida's working with. And then you factor in the monetary side of it, like you said, the investment level. I mean, I'm not giving Oklahoma a pass for it, but you can see why it happened. You can see the path to it. And like you said, Oklahoma goes and wins games. Maybe it can change a little bit because we talk about that a lot with Groce, that there was it's wobbly. It's hard to get players like this when they don't totally know what the future looks like. And I know we just talked about that with Jake Kreul. That's what made that impressive to get a player like that, because you're working a little bit of an uphill battle with that right now. So we'll see what happens when they get into the season. They win some games. Maybe things can change, but you could see how something like this could happen. It's realistic.
It's a heck of a point made by you, and I don't want to skip it over because I feel like this is such an important thing to emphasize. Guys, we all watched what happened last year. And whether or not you want to debate whether Florida and Oklahoma are in similar positions, that's totally fine. But like anything, there's layered context to things. And what Josh just said rings so true. No matter how you feel about either program, when you compare what Florida did last year on the offensive side of the ball to what OU did on the offensive side of the ball, if you're someone like Davian Groce, guys, like, he is an Oklahoma fan who probably watched almost every single game last year. And he watched that offense nearly every single game last year as an offensive recruit, right?
Yeah.
Like, Jake Kreul's committing to Oklahoma over Florida, I think partially because the defense has proven to be really, really good, right? And, like, he buys into that. I can't, and I don't want to speak for anybody, but, like, I can't blame an offensive recruit, especially someone who keeps up with the program as much as someone like maybe Davian, for having a hard time buying into that offense.
Yeah.
Right. At least show me first. So
sure.
I think that's such an important point to make. Take the similar program status aside. Like, you look at the offensive side of the ball, and a guy of Davian's caliber wants to be sold something with a vision. And we just don't see it. We haven't seen it yet. And that could be proved this fall.
Yeah, no doubt. And, you know, we said Florida end of the year, 4-game win streak. Again, LSU, Ole Miss. Think of Oklahoma's last 4 games offensively. Missouri threw up all over themselves. Alabama won the game, but it was ground and pound. It was with defense. It wasn't like offensive fireworks by any means. LSU game was ugly, and then they lost to Navy in the bowl game, right? I mean, that's how they closed their season. Again, there's a lot of excitement. It's going to be a lot different this time around. Ben Arbuckle, John Mateer, everything that everyone already knows. But if you're a kid committing to a program, you want to see it probably a little bit first. So we'll see how this goes. It may not be the last we hear of Davian Groce, but for now, he's a Gator, and a little bit of a gut punch earlier this week for sure. Spinning right off that, kind of what's left in 2026? Well, what's on the table here for Oklahoma? Because I mentioned right off the top with the Groce stuff. They have one wide receiver, Daniel Odom, committed in 2026. So I know a lot of OU fans are going to say, wide receiver. Is there anyone else we can circle back to or flip or whatever? Take whatever direction you want. You can start on offense if you'd like, but
sure.
You know, obviously we're still 4 months from signing day. High school season's about to start. Oklahoma only has 16 guys committed in 26, which is a low number after you just had a low number in 25 as well. How aggressive is Oklahoma going to be between now and December to try to get some more players? And if you want to get specific names, obviously feel free to do that. But what's still on the table for Oklahoma in 2026?
So I'll dive into 3 names on each side of the ball very quickly. But I think a lot of this, to your question, as far as the aggressiveness to try and pull off some stuff, it's obviously going to have a lot to do with exactly what we're talking about. What happens on the field this year, right? You got to have some steam behind you to get that train going and build that momentum, right? And so that being said, Oklahoma is still working very hard right now to try to go after some guys. And so starting on the offensive side, there's a few names I'm keeping my eye on. Let's start with the wide receiver, Braden Allen out of Lafayette, Louisiana, Lafayette Christian Academy, 6'1", 170 pounds. This is a guy who has been on campus before. If I remember correctly, he was on our visitor list sometime in the spring for one of the events. Couldn't tell you off the top of my head which one, but again, someone who is familiar with the program. So Braden Allen is committed to Tulane. Now, here's why that's important. I talked to some Tulane staffers at the personnel symposium a couple weeks ago, and my message to them was like, I don't know what you guys are doing, but it's working, and I love it because whether it's him or I'll just give you one, like Trez Davis, their 4-star wide receiver committed to Tulane, who's at the top of their class, I think can play in Oklahoma, no doubt. Like, Tulane's got dudes, and Tulane is considered one of the best run G5 operations in the country right now.
Sure.
You know my saying, Josh. Flips are expensive. That's both financially, but then time-wise, you got to put a lot of effort in a number of different ways into these things. And I think when you're talking about Tulane, who can compete to a degree in the financial aspect to something I talked with the Tulane staffers about. Tulane is doing a great job of recruiting guys like Braden Allen who live in the state of Louisiana. And like Josh, you always like to act like you don't know recruiting. You do. You could tell me right now how hard it is to get guys out of the state of Louisiana.
Yeah.
Especially when they're committed to a program in the state of Louisiana.
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
I think Braden Allen is very interested in Oklahoma, though. I do expect this player to be on campus in September. I would keep an eye on one of the first couple of weeks. I think OU is working hard to get him to Norman for a game day visit. I think there are a few other programs hovering here as well. So OU will also have to compete with them in addition to obviously the program that has his pledge in Tulane. But Braden Allen at 6'1", 170 pounds, wide receiver, kind of the guy to monitor with some of the stuff that we're talking about. And then two quick names to follow that up as far as what's next in 2026. We didn't get to talk about this guy because I was briefly on vacation and then my body was falling apart. And then we had stuff going on last week as well with all these decisions, but I'm going to butcher it. So bear with me. Vlad Diakonov, offensive tackle out in California, committed to USC, 4-star prospect. OU offered him early this month. We'll see what happens there. Can they pull off the flip of a Cali kid committed to USC and Lincoln Riley? I don't know, but that's a very recent offer in the 26 cycle that's worth bringing up. And then the last guy that I want to mention here, we talked about last night, IMG Academy, Jake Kreul playing. Another IMG name to know, Stephen Picard. So interesting one here. Again, IMG offensive lineman, 6'5", 300 pounds-ish, committed to Syracuse. And you want to talk about programs that have it going right now. Brandon Brown and the Orange are, they're serious, man. Like they've got a 5-star wide receiver committed in Calvin Russell. Stephen Picard is someone who Oklahoma's been interested in for a while, kind of keeping warm. I would keep an eye on this one as well. I think this is someone else who could show up in the fall. I don't have any, anything concrete to report currently, but just a kind of a trio of names on the offensive side when we talk about what's next in 26.
No, definitely interesting names. In particular, certainly Braden Allen, the Tulane commit. Again, one wide receiver right now in Daniel Odom, who, again, we talked about at the time, but that's feeling ever more and more huge that they managed to retain him. Emmett Jones, we're both big fans of Emmett Jones, and he's catching a little heat right now because he, didn't get Groce, and fair or unfair, and frankly, it's unfair, but still, last season being what it was, obviously the wide receiver room was horrendous last year. Again, not really his fault. Everyone was hurt, but there's a little bit of he could use a little some PR victories with Allen if he could find a way to pull that off. Because obviously Elijah Thomas having a great camp. I think we all think he's going to play right away as a true freshman. You also have Manny Choice in that class with a lot of upside. Previous cycle looking like Zion Kearney has a lot of upside, but Ivan Carrion and Zion Raggins a little to be determined, right? So finding a way to get another guy to go with Odom would be nice in 2026. So that's certainly the one that sticks out to me of that triumvirate there of that offensive group. Defensively, what's still on the table there? Obviously, because you get Jake Kreul in, a lot of excitement. You kind of look at what they have right now in this class defensively. You kind of do a quick peruse. You got the 3 edge rushers I mentioned. Ja'Cory Smith's your one linebacker. You got Bo Jandro as well. Brian Harris at D tackle. It's a nice kind of smattering of
Nico Jandro in there as well. Yeah.
Nico Jandro for sure. Derek Johnson, the corner. What's still on the table there? And what would Oklahoma like to add in terms of positionally still in 2026, if there's anything in particular that you think is going to have an emphasis between now and, again, December, whenever they sign these guys?
Yeah, look, I said it right off the top, a lot to celebrate, right? So let's get back into the celebration mode a little bit because I
Yeah,
think Oklahoma could be getting some good news again here pretty soon. So right off the top here, James Carrington, also known as Tank,
great nickname.
decommits from Florida State yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
So some backdrop on him. Oklahoma has been interested in Tank for a long time, like a long time. And you go back to January, he told me and a few of our other 24/7 recruiting reporters that his two favorites at that time, again, this is January, were Oklahoma and Texas A&M. He had built a really strong relationship with Todd Bates, but then you go from January into the summer. It was kind of late May where Carrington ends up canceling his official visit in Norman, one that was scheduled for the June 6th to 8th weekend, which had a ton of guys on campus. So at that time, it was like, okay, not good, right?
Yeah.
But, and I was going to put this in a little notes thing whenever I get the time, or if I'm, if I get a little bit of rest under me. It was around June, I want to say mid-June, that Carrington reached out to me, and among some of the things he wanted to discuss, said, "Hey, just want to let you know I'm still talking to Bates in Oklahoma. Might figure out a visit. I don't know."
Yeah.
That was kind of the fullest extent of that conversation at that time. Again, this is June. I didn't think a ton of it. Think, okay, Oklahoma's still maintaining that relationship. Good on them. You never know with this stuff. Then you get a few days after that conversation I had with Carrington, he commits to Florida State. I want to say like the day of his official visit in Tallahassee. And FSU did a great job. I know FSU, talking to our guy, Zach Blowstein over there at Knowles 24/7, FSU's really emphasized defensive line recruiting this cycle.
Mm-hmm.
So they worked quickly to get that thing done. But I think you go from a few weeks out of that, I think some things were getting worked on. And inevitably, I do think this is a decision that both Carrington and Florida State kind of made to go separate directions. And I think immediately out of that, every conversation I've had with people indicates that Oklahoma's the favorite here. And I don't know that Carrington or OU are down to wait too long to figure out whether or not that potential partnership should be brought into reality. Now, we'll see. All I'm going to say is like, keep your eyes open out there.
Yeah.
Head to SoonersIllustrated.com. Maybe we'll be talking a little bit more ball here in a second. You know what I mean? So, Tank Carrington, again, maybe going to give OU a little bit more to celebrate. Going from that, we haven't talked about this guy a ton. He's been brought up. Teron Richardson, defensive tackle out there on the east side of the country. Oklahoma, Virginia Tech, a few others in there. He's getting ready to make his decision on August 26th. Sounds like Oklahoma's somewhere towards the top here. Virginia Tech has always been a big-time threat. They're kind of like the hometown team. I think VT is getting aggressive here. I think Oklahoma is planning to be aggressive as well. It's again, guys, like it's so hard because we try to talk to each other about like, okay, this is what it kind of looks like now. Could look a lot different, even in a matter of like 24 hours. Kind of chalk the Teron Richardson recruitment up to that. Like I would not be surprised if there's a lot of shifting and shuffling behind the scenes before he makes that call on the 26th. And I think Oklahoma's getting ready to be aggressive there. And then to round it out, a guy that we've mentioned before, Jacob Curry, the linebacker safety committed to Northwestern out of Nice in Florida. Another just kind of like Brent Venables guy. I would say, again, one of somewhat similar to the linebacker safety haul you kind of have in this class with guys like Ja'Cory Smith, the Jandro brothers. I kind of see Curry as someone who, somewhat similar to Nico, can be a cheetah, maybe some weak side backer to the safety, maybe like versatile player, ideal Brent Venables fit. And this is another guy that I fully expect to be on campus more than likely in September. He's committed to Northwestern. Just to reiterate, I know I say a lot, flips are expensive, but I said it before and I'll say it again, probably helps you're competing with maybe someone like Northwestern instead of Florida.
Sure.
So,
sure.
I don't know. There's a lot of talk right now about, is he going to stay committed to Northwestern? And even if he does, how long will that pledge status maintain? I don't think anyone knows the answer, but I think Oklahoma, and I said this before, but again, I want to say it here, depending on just how hard OU chooses to press here, because they're in a really good spot with like the linebacker safety hybrid types, right?
Mm-hmm.
If OU really wants to get aggressive here, I think things could potentially move quickly with Jacob Curry, and I can see why they would choose to do that because, again, he just feels like a Brent Venables guy.
For sure. And, the pursuit of some defensive tackles certainly, seems logical to me. I mean, you have one right now with Brian Harris. You just signed one with Trent Wilson the year before. So guys are going to roll off here. Your Grayson Haltons and Dominic Williams. Like you're going to need to replenish that room a little bit. I mean, obviously Jaden Jackson, David Stone will still be around, but I know they love Trent Wilson and a lot of excitement there. And obviously Brian Harris, the guy we've talked about, it seems like there's a lot of upside there coming in. But to add a couple more bodies, that seems logical to me. So we'll see if they can do it with at least one of them, if not maybe both. I mean, we'll see how obviously it shakes out. But that seems to make a lot of sense. And also too, just kind of in general, as you're going through this, and I know you didn't mention the Michigan game specifically, but we talked about it. That just feels like a huge weekend for Oklahoma, just all around. I'm guessing a lot of these September visits, that's going to be where Oklahoma's going to want to try and shuffle people to, because that is just going to be a huge weekend. I mean, it's a massive game. It's a top 20 matchup. We'll see what the rankings look like then. Both teams are going to be 1-0. It's almost certainly going to be College game day. It's under the lights like that. That has the makings of a huge weekend. If Oklahoma can play well and, kind of ride that a little bit. I'm feeling like when we do the recruiting show that week, that visitor list is going to be long, and we're going to be talking about like this is a huge weekend for Oklahoma to go play well and kind of get some momentum. So it just that feels like a huge weekend. Obviously on the field, but also kind of off it as well. That's going to be a scene, and you're going to be in town. It sounds is the tentative plan, which is that's how you know it's going to be a big weekend. CK,
yeah. I think that will be the first OU game I will have covered in Norman in person in years.
Worth it.
Goes to show you. Goes to show you how big of a deal it's going to be with the recruits, to the stakes of the game and everything.
Can't wait.
Before we get out of here, can we goof for a little bit? Can we riff for a little bit for like 2 minutes? So 2 times that my phone lit up this week, the most. Jake Kreul goes sack in 3 plays. The other time my phone lit up the most, I have to get your reaction to this. Can I get your official reaction comment statement on Oklahoma selling post-game media access tickets? To my knowledge, the first time that's happened. $692.11.
Like $700.
You can go into the post-game media room and see Josh and I at the Michigan game and roll your eyes as we walk into the room. Where are you at with this? Because I don't know that we get a chance to talk about this outside of this pod. Like
my only real thought is that I implore fans to not waste their money on $700 to go to the post-game press conference, which I would only be going to. Or I'm only going to, I should say, because it is my job to go.
Yeah.
It is not that exciting. Now, if they let fans ask a question, now we're talking.
This is my question. Can you pay more is it a per question payment?
Because now it's interesting. If we can let a fan have a question, now
where do you sit? Like, where do you sit in the media room? You know how it goes?
Yes, yeah.
Is it awkwardly going to be like a gallery of people standing or sitting in the?
Well, that's the thing is like there kind of already is that because usually like some donors and stuff are in the post-game press conference with Joe C and like usually Brent's Venables family. Sometimes it's like there kind of is a crowd already. So I think they'll just kind of be in
but
the
not
mix.
like this.
It makes me think, and we may have mentioned it back at the time. Maybe we didn't on the pod. I can't remember. But in Baton Rouge last year, a random fan made his way into the post game in Baton Rouge last year. That guy had the hack because he didn't pay anything, and obviously he got the boot whenever Mike Houck, shout out, kind of recognized like who is this guy sitting in the post game. He was in the dead like middle. There was like 4 rows of seats, and he was in the very dead middle, just blending in. Shout out that guy who he got the boot, but he was in there for the first few minutes. He did not get a question in. But yeah, I can't in good conscience suggest that fans pay that to be in for the press conference. It's not
what was it when we were in the Big 12? Was it TCU that let the fans stand there and watch the post-game press conference? Not for OU, but some school we went to.
I think it was maybe TCU. I can't remember who that was. I know what you're talking about. The home press conference, you're saying. Yeah, I can't remember. Yeah, that's a thing, though. That's a thing.
Because if I remember correctly, and maybe TCU, maybe another school, I just remember like there are fans that are right there.
Yeah.
If I remember correctly, they're behind glass or something. So it's almost like they're watching a zoo exhibit. I can't imagine paying $700 for an uncomfortable zoo exhibit. You know, like what's not awkward about that for everybody?
It feels like a Dallas Cowboys thing to do. It feels like something Jerry Jones would be.
It's like how they, who is it? Dalton Schultz in his little expose was like, yeah, I'd be working out in our team weight room. And they're like escorting the fans on the tour and they're watching me like I'm in my cage.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm curious to see who pays for this. I can't wait to meet you.
I'm guessing. Yeah, someone will. And
I will shake your hand at the Michigan game if I'm there and you're there and you pay for this ticket. I would love to hear what the experience is like, to be honest. And then, like, what are we doing with this money? That's my other question. $692. That's a specific number, man.
Yeah.
It's a large, specific number. What are we doing with the post-game media access?
That is a good question that you bring up. Where did they get the number from? Because it's $692.11, I think. Isn't it 11 cents? Where did they get it? How did they come up with that number? I'd love to know that as well. Also, in the description, it says in the moments immediately following the game or something like that. That is doing a lot of legwork because if anyone knows, it's not immediately following the game. It takes a while to get things rolling. That's being very loose with the term immediately following the game or moments after the game or whatever it says. Keep that in mind before you pay your $700. Be prepared to wait around.
You're going to be paying $692.11
to hear us all complain for an hour.
To hear everyone in that room be upset that it's like 30 minutes past scheduled time and nothing's happened yet. And then it's just going to be even more awkward for everybody. I think I would get it more if they let you ask a question. I think that's
wild. That would be wild, especially considering that you have to pay for this, assuming and make it all happen before the game. I'm assuming like it's not like an in the moment thing. So you pay for it against Michigan, and then Oklahoma, scores 7 points and they lose to Michigan. That's not going to be a real fun.
You're going to want your refund.
Yeah, and you get out of it. Wild thing. Again, I can't.
That's my goof.
Anyone pays that. I can't, in good conscience, suggest you pay that.
Again,
watch it on the YouTube channel afterward. You get the same.
If I'm serious about this, if you pay for these tickets, and important, $692.11 is for 2 people.
2 people.
So, but you have to buy it at $692.11. So, anyway, if you do this, I want to meet you at the Michigan game. I have to hear what it's like. I can't ignore this.
Yeah, who
so please reach out.
Where do you go? There's a lot of questions. Hopefully someone does it. If someone does it for the Illinois State game, they're a real sicko if they do it for the Illinois State.
Oh, by the way, to get out, Oklahoma did this. You know what I mean?
I know.
Oklahoma chose to do this.
Brett will sign off on this.
I'm shocked that this was their idea. This is more like a.
Crazy.
I'm trying to even think of a decent example. Maybe, I don't know, Texas like lets a bunch of fans sit and watch the presser.
It feels Texas-y. Yeah, it feels like something Texas would do for sure.
Not Georgia, but like Oklahoma,
Colorado,
the old secretive Sooners. It's interesting.
That it is. Again, can't suggest anyone does it, but if you do, please let us know. We'd love to meet you.
Yes.
Just to pick your brain a little bit, at the very least. I think that's it for now. We'll be back next week. We're 2 weeks away from playing games. It's pretty crazy. We're back, Tom, James, and myself on theoretically Monday. I keep saying that, and there keeps being camp stuff. Monday or Tuesday next week. We'll wrap up our position preview series, kind of wrap up camp, really, as we get ready to get into the first game week. Collin and I will be back later next week to hit on some other recruiting stuff and anything else going on out of fall camp. We haven't really talked, Collin and I, a lot of camp. We might do that a little bit next week as we, again, kind of wrap it up and get into the first game week. And then it'll be about that time. We'll be setting the stage for the opener in the 2025 season. A lot to be excited about. We are getting very, very close, folks. 2 weeks from tomorrow. And again, if you're watching this right now, we're going to try and turn this show and get out early today. Brent Venables meeting with the media today, Friday. So keep an eye out for that on the YouTube channel later this afternoon to kind of hear from him and everything going on. Just 2 weeks away from the opener again. Sooners Pod 60. Use that promo code to get 60% off right now. A year subscription to Sooners Illustrated. Use it, use it, use it. That's it for now. For Collin Kennedy, I'm Josh Callaway signing off. See you next time right back here, as always, on Sooners Illustrated.